Welcome back to another Spirit Island video. In this video, we're going to be talking about the events that you should pay for. Starting off, we have Years a Little Rain. Now, this is the water event. We have two options. The first option is if we don't pay for it. The second option is if we do. Now, if we don't pay for it, it says that you're going to flip a minor card from the top of the minor deck. If it lacks water, it's going to add a blight to a stands. In addition, all buildings and Dahan will have -1 health. Now looking at the payment effect, it's going to be 4 energy per player aided by water. So what this means, if you're not familiar with it, is for every player you have, you need to be paying 4 energy. So this is a 1 spirit game, so I need to come up with 4 energy. Now aided by water. That means every card I have in play that generates water elements will help contribute to the event. And I need a total of 4. So if I have 1 water card in play, I'll have 1 water, which means I need to come up with 3 other water. Now I also have the option to discard cards in my hand that will each give me +2 water for each card discarded, or I can choose to forget a card in hand, in discard, or in play. And if you forget, you'd get plus a total of 4 water. One mistake a lot of players make is they'll forget a card in play for that 4 water, but they'll still factor in the 1 water that the card had in play. Notice that I lost that water here, so if you forget the water card, you lose the water card that you have in play. Assuming that's the card you're forgetting. If the card you're forgetting is the card in play, you will lose that water, or that element. So, if we pay for Years a Little Rain, it says each spirit may add a presence to one of their lands with Dahan. And adding a presence, that's like a proliferation. This is an event you always want to pay for if you can. And once again, rewarding players that are placing presence in lands with Dahan. Now, this event is very powerful because it also comes with Beast's Attack, which is the strongest beast damage card in the game, or beast damage effect. And it says each beast deals 2 damage, remove tokens that destroy buildings, and it also comes with a very powerful defend 1 per Dahan. So this is seen as being the best event for the spirits in the entire game. 3 very powerful effects: proliferation, damage, and defend. Now I'm looking at the 3 events that you really want to pay for, because if you don't, bad things happen. And we're going to start off looking at Rising Interest. And this is going to be that air event. Now, if you don't pay for it, we're going to add a town and you're going to accelerate the invader deck. That means you're going to remove the top card and put it over here. That acceleration could be game losing into some adversaries, such as Prussia or England or even Russia. Now, Beasts of the Jungle, it says that you get to add a beast to a jungle without blight, adding a fear. This is pretty neutral. And then it says Traps and Snares. This allows you to add a wilds to a land with Dahan, which is positive. Now, looking at the payment effect for this card. Now, if you pay for it, you actually destroy a fear card from the top of the deck, which is pretty cool. But every building is going to be doing +1 damage. So Rising Interest is one of those cards where even if you pay for it, this could still screw you. In so many games, this effect screws us just because you pick top, you get screwed. Pay for it, you also get screwed. I wish this wasn't as punishing, just because if you're already contributing and you're paying that 4 energy per air, it hates to have a pretty negative effect. But that's just how the card was designed. Looking at Missionaries here, this is the Sun event. If you choose to not pay for it, you're going to discard cards from the top of the minor deck per player. If the card lacks Sun, like this card, that player is going to replace a Dahan with a town. If it has Sun, they get to push an Explorer. And then after resolving this card goes back into the event deck. So that means it comes up again. This is a card that you want to pay for as soon as you can, because having to deal with it again could be pretty problematic. Now, looking at the very bottom part here, it says Prey on the Unwary. It says each beast destroys 1 explorer, so this is a nice positive effect. Now, just like Rising Interest, if you do pay for Missionaries, you do get a positive effect, as in you're going to add disease and you're going to generate a lot of fear. But all cities are going to do +3 damage. So this is really going to screw those players that have set up certain defenses, or maybe you're playing against Habsburg Livestock, and now that coastal city was only doing 3 damage, and now it's going to be a loss condition. So This increasing the damage here is pretty problematic. What's really cool about this card is the disease has to be added to a land with cities. So if your board, if your starting island board that has no cities, you can give this disease out to another player. And the last event in this tier is New Species Spread, and this is going to be that moon event. Luckily, out of the three, this is the easiest one, or the less painful one, or the least painful one. It says for each board, discard the top minor power. If it has, or if it is fast, you add a blight to a land with buildings. And then after resolving this card, it goes back in the event deck. So once again, just like missionaries, if you do not pay for it, you get to see it again. Now, if you do pay for it, you're going to get 1 fear per player, and then you get to add a beast. So it's a beast add if you pay for it. Now, it does suck, this new species spread. It's going to add disease onto boards, and it's going to kill Dahan. And it's going to happen to half of the boards rounded up. So the main reason why you don't want to be seeing this card is because it will go back in the deck. So see it the first time, it'll kill a Dahan. If it goes back in the deck, it'll kill Dahan again. Fortunately, though, you do have offerings of Pattern and Dance, which is going to reward players that are placing presents and lands with Dahan, and this is going to give you 1 energy. So these are the 3 events that are painful if you don't pay for them. If you do pay for them, they're painful. I guess these 2 are, but not as bad. Okay, looking at the next tier here, these are the 2 events that you want to pay for, but sometimes not paying for it is okay as well. And we have Lesser Spirits Imperiled and Sacred Sites Under Threat. Both of these events are seen as being pretty positive for the spirits, just like Years of Little Rain. Let's look at Lesser Spirits. So if you don't pay for it, you're going to gain an energy, and then you're going to flip a card from the minor deck. If it has plant, a blight gets removed. If it has animal, a Dahan gets destroyed in a land with blight. Because not paying for it is granting you an energy, it doesn't feel that bad, and you need to flip plant to lose the blight, which doesn't always happen. I think I've taken compared to New Species Spread, where fast versus slow, you tend to blight a lot more than this card only needing a specific element. Now, if you do pay for it, it says Forge a Web of Mutual Support, and it says each spirit destroys a presence. That's not really that bad. And then you gain a permanent element, so this can be very, very powerful. So this card, if you don't pay for it, it doesn't hurt that bad. If you do pay for it, it can be very strong. And then the bottom part is very positive. This is going to generate fear and beast movement. And then the bottom part here, also, it's probably closer to neutral. It's just Dahan movement. Okay, looking at Sacred Sites Under Threat. This is a fire event, and you're going to be paying 3 energy per land where you do damage. I do think that this event is a bit confusing. It took me a while to kind of fully grasp what the heck this thing was saying. But first, I'm not going to look at the top part here. I find that you should always choose this option. This is the weird event where you can choose to not pay for it, but then choose the bottom option. Picking this top option, I find to be pretty painful in a multiplayer setting, because usually this will just take off a single blight per player. Well, not usually, it does. And in like a 5-player game, that's like -5 blight, which is just devastating. But this bottom part here, it's going to check in each land that has sacred sites and invaders. So instead of scaling this part here by the number of players, it's going to scale by the number of sacred sites. So if you have, let's say you have, oh, not blight. There we go. Let's say you have 3 sacred sites. 2 of them have invaders, 1 of them does not. That means I'll need to be paying 6 energy aided by fire if I want to keep them both alive. Now, if I choose to keep the sacred site alive, I get to do 2 damage, and then I have to pay that fire. Or per sacred site, I can choose to destroy the that presence instead. So, for instance, if you look over here, oh, there we go. So if you look over here, I could, let's say, do 2 damage here and pay for this. I paid for that one. And let's say I choose to not pay for this, I can then destroy the presence. So destroying the presence is not that big of a deal. A lot of times they're not going to have more than maybe 3 lands with sacred sites and invaders. But I've also seen players have a lot more than that. In most of my games, I only have maybe a couple, 1 or 2, but then destroying presence isn't that big of a downside. And then you have Beast's Prow, which is going to generate a lot of fear or move beasts. And then finally, you have a way to gain minor powers. And this is really powerful if you're playing around it with that 4 Dahan. Looking at the next event here, we have Dahan trade with the invaders. This is an event that most of the time we want to be choosing this middle option here. You choose the top option, Dahan do not participate. You choose the middle, you lose Dahan and generate fear. And then choosing this bottom option is always bad. Well, I'm sure there's a there's a case where this isn't always bad, but with all of my experience, I think I've picked it maybe once and it actually mattered. And the reason for that is because it's going to cost you 6 energy, plus Dahan don't participate, plus loot, you lose another card. So in a 6-player game, it's too costly. And then you have Outbreak Shift. This is disease that is going to be moved. So a lot of times we're going to pick the first or the second level on that event. Now, finally, we have 2 more events, and these are the events that you're not going to want to pay for. We have Remnants of the Spirit's Heart and Life's Balance Tilt. Looking at Remnants here, you choose the top portion. Dahan essentially become mortal, and then inlands with Dahan, invaders also have extra health. So it's going to be harder to kill invaders in those Dahan lands, but the Dahans are going to be very, very durable in those lands. Now, you could also choose to pay for energy per player aided by Earth. If you do, defend from spirits is lowered by 4. Like, once again, we've talked about, like, when you pay for these events, you don't want to have a negative effect. And -4 defend across the entire board essentially means all of your defensive powers you've played this turn just don't work. Now, you do get to have a defend 4 on a following turn, but it's just too painful. Like, you have to pay for it to have this really negative effect. Usually ends up causing, I'd say, between 3 and, I mean, at least 3 blight. I'm not sure. Depends on the number of players, but I've seen this card cause, if we paid for it, like 8 or 9 blight. But if you choose top, it just makes your doing damage just a little bit more challenging, which isn't that big of a deal. So I never pay for this card. Hunting parties, this part sucks. It's this for each land with beasts and cities. You lose a beast and you gain a fear. I hate this effect because it can kill multiple beasts, especially if you're playing Fangs into like England. I've had this card flip and I've lost 2 or 3 beasts. And finally, 1,000 Small Struggles. This is also a negative effect. This is on each board with 4 more buildings and 4 fewer Dahan. Add a blight to a land without Dahan. So this is going to punish players that are losing those Dahan or throwing those Dahan off their board. Overall, I really wish this card get redesigned. Out of all of the events up here, this is like one of them that just, it always sucks to see it. It's not like game losing, it's just unfun. Just because there's not really a choice between the pick event and then both of these are just negative effects. Life's Balance Tilt, this is the animal event. Also, a card that picking top is just almost always better. So if you don't pay for it, you're going to lose a beast, add a disease. So adding a disease is going to skip a build, which is insane because that build skip could be like Essential versus France, Essential versus England, um, or putting that disease down could maybe stop a Habsburg mining ravage. Just so much value here. Then there's that chance to add blight, just like there is with new species spread. And then all the invaders into Dahan have -1 health. I've seen this -1 health be amazing for spirits that are doing a lot of damage in the slow. It does hurt that Dahan have -1 health because I've seen like single explorers pick off Dahan. I've seen towns just like a lot of those ravages where you're just slightly under. This will cause Dahan to die, which kind of sucks. But the disease add, in my opinion, makes up for it. Now, if you pay for it, so if you're paying the 4 energy per animal, you're going to lose disease. So now you're causing extra builds. You're adding beasts. The beast add doesn't really matter so much unless you're a beast spirit. Then there's that chance to remove blight, which is nice. But then invaders are going to have +1 health. So like it's no longer a conditional +1 add. It's like all invaders across the board. And this is going to be just very, very rough on top of the disease loss. So like you're paying for this effect to lose disease, and now you can't kill invaders. It's just not very good. Um, just this is almost always better. This top part here. So that's good. This is not. And then once again, we have that 1,000 Small Struggles, which is just a negative. It's going to punish those players that are pushing those Dahan off their board to help out adjacent. So these are the 2 events that I would love to see changed most. Honestly, Years of Little Rain definitely should be changed as well. I mean, I think if you just make these 2 parts negative, I think you can keep the top being positive. Like, this is okay. Like, I think having a prolif effect on event is a good place to have a proliferation, but having 2 positive effects on top of it just makes the card too good. So if these were both negative, or if maybe one was negative and one was neutral, I think you'd have a pretty balanced event. And then, of course, I would revisit adjusting these two cards, and I would also look at revisiting this card, as this card I find to be a little bit too negative. If you like this video, like, subscribe for more content. I'll see you guys in the next video.